big flash or something like that.
Good evening and welcome to the Monday, February 10th, Maplewood City Council City Manager Workshop. City Manager Coleman, I'll apologize right away for my throat. I'll be having cough drops, and I'm drinking tea, and I have special Vicks-infused Kleenex. That's how desperate this is. You know, it's a Minnesota head cold, so you just go with it.
And I have my hand sanitizer
Yeah.
right
And
here.
please, I'll warn everyone, I'm not shaking hands, I'm not getting close to anybody, because I don't want to give this to anybody. So, City Manager Coleman, would you please do our roll call?
I would certainly do that. Councilmember Neblett. Hello. Councilmember Smith.
Here.
Councilmember Juniman.
Here.
Councilmember Knutson.
Here.
Mayor Abrams.
Here. Council members, do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Neblett, seconded by Smith. Motion to approve the agenda. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes. We have no unfinished business tonight. We have as new business the fire station needs assessment and design recommendations. And we are going to have a report from Chief Mondor. Are you ready? Welcome.
Mayor Abrams, Council, thank you for having us. I'll give a brief presentation and update of kind of where we've come from with the fire station project. And then John McNamara from Wold Architectural and Engineering will give the more technical details of the fire station and the design and where we're at today for your consideration. If I could have the slides. So as a brief background, just wanted to remind you, council, and anyone watching that this hasn't been a decision that we've come to overnight. It's been several years of planning and process to get us to this point. Council Member Knutson served on our fire EMS work group that started in 2016. One of the deliverables from that group was to enter into agreement with Fitch and Associates to do a fire station location and operational review in 2017. Those recommendations were presented to you in January of 2018. Really the meat of that review and that report had two phases for us to implement. The first phase was to transition to a full-time fire department, which we did in the spring of 2018, and which is working well here to serve the community. The other part was to look at our fire station locations. The study found that our current locations of the Gladstone station and the Hazelwood station were less than 1%. We added less than 1% of effectiveness for response. So that forced us to pursue some other questions, and we'll get into that a little bit further here. We had a series of community engagement meetings. This was communicated in a citywide survey. It's been out in the city newsletter. Those happened this summer, and then in September, we came to you and asked for permission to enter into an agreement to do the fire station needs assessment and design recommendations, which we will present to you later tonight. As I said, in September, we came to you and asked to move forward with the Fitch's recommendations to consolidate to a two-station model. We entered into an agreement with Wold shortly after that to conduct the assessment. We kicked the project off in October and then started with having internal stakeholder meetings, which we did with staff representatives from each shift and our leadership team. In November, we also started meeting with Wold in October and started to kind of build some guiding principles, which Mr. McNamara will get into. In November, Wold met with that fire station focus group and gathered feedback from all levels of the organization to make sure that we're taking into account how this building is going to affect all of our staff, firefighters, officers, and administration. We toured several newly built stations throughout the metropolitan area from departments that are similarly situated to us so that we could start to gather some ideas and Wold could kind of put those into how that's going to meet our needs moving into the future. That plan was revised and finalized in December. And I just wanted to point out that our initial space program had 4,300 square feet more than what we ended up with. So this program continued to evolve and be refined throughout the process. And we've taken several considerations in trying to put forward a station that's going to meet our needs today and moderately into the future, but also understanding that we want to be financially responsible in the construction of this station. The space program was proposed and presented to City Manager Coleman, Assistant City Manager Sable, Public Works Director Love was there as well, and Ms. Paulseth, so that they could get an understanding of where we're at with the project, and then we asked for permission to come here tonight to present this to you all. Some of the program highlights, so as you're familiar, Station 3 or Hazelwood Station was built in the 1970s and is in need of several updates. That station is 6,000 square feet. Station number 2 in the Gladstone neighborhood was built in the late 90s and is 12,000 square feet. So we are building some of the footprint for this station, but that comes with a lot of the apparatus, the staff, the amount of people, and the facility needs of a 2020 fire station versus a 1970s or 1990s fire station. This station will be the department's headquarters, will accommodate all administrative staff, training, meeting space, and other support functions that are currently spread out throughout the community at our stations. We'll be relocating 5 to 6 shift personnel daily and 4 administrative staff, in addition to the 2 people that are already housed out of that station. So there'll be 7 to 8 line staff daily operating out of this station. We'll be relocating 3 frontline apparatus, reserve ambulance, several support vehicles, a backup ambulance, and a boat and utility truck that are currently stationed out of that area. So one component that we want to communicate to council is how we construct a fire station has changed dramatically over the past 5 years. We built one in 2014, and the cancer reduction efforts and awareness around the cancer risks that firefighters face had just kind of started to pop up. And now there's been more and more studies that have shown the impact of cancer rates in firefighters. So a recent study that was a retrospective study of 50,000 firefighters conducted by NIOSH indicated that firefighters face a 9% increase in cancer diagnosis versus the general population, and a 14% increase in cancer-related deaths compared to the general population. So we're going to talk about some of the safety mechanisms that we built into the station to help address some of that research. We've taken several steps all the operational steps that we currently can to help minimize that risk through gross decontamination, and how firefighters each have 2 sets of gear, but we've exhausted the extent that we can do that in our current configuration. You'll see a dedicated gear storage area for clearing gear that won't be exposed to diesel exhaust and contaminants, an establishment of red, yellow, and green areas to reduce cross-contamination throughout the station, a dedicated decontamination area that allows employees to remove and bag contaminated clothing. And these are all recommendations that are built by industry experts such as the U.S. Fire Administration, the International Association of Fire Chiefs, Cancer Alliance, et cetera. Another safety and wellness component that we've addressed in this station that we don't currently have at the Hazelwood and Gladstone stations is 43% of firefighter-related deaths are cardiac-related. So we wanted to make sure that we have an adequate wellness space for our firefighters to get the physical fitness activities done that they need to prepare them to serve the community and get home to their families. Some efficiencies. As I stated earlier, we worked with all levels of the organization to ensure that everyone had input in this station design. This isn't the fire chief's station design. This had someone from each level of the organization to address all of our needs. As I mentioned, the initial space programming was over 34,000 square feet, and we worked to reduce that by over 4,000 square feet. When you look at the conceptual design, you'll see that we aim to build areas that will serve multiple purposes. So The training room could also serve as an EOC or a community gathering space. The conference rooms can support day-to-day administrative functions, but also can serve as breakout rooms for training or EOC breakout rooms. So we put a lot of thought into saying we don't want to build a space that only serves one function. We want it to have 2 or 3 or 4 functions in each space. The building's planned to accommodate growth beyond what is currently built, but with moderation. So we want to plan responsibly into the future as our staffing needs continue to evolve. An important note that I meant, you've all been to the Hazelwood station and seen the state of repair that it's in. Our estimates in working with building operations are that over the next 15 years, our 2 existing stations would require nearly $3.5 million in upgrades through HVAC, roofs, mechanical, parking lots, et cetera. Another feature is this building will be more efficient, follow the green building code, and maximize energy efficiency and environmental responsibility. And that brings us to where we are tonight. With that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Wold, and he can give an overview of the program, and then we'll certainly entertain any questions.
Evening, Mayor and Council. Again, I'm John McNamara with Wold Architects. I have a couple of staff members, Paige Sullivan and Jake Wolensack, who helped work on this project. Chief Monder did a great job of kind of giving you an overview, and tonight I really wanted to talk about some of the excitement around what some of the things that we were talking about have kind of come into the solution that we have for Council tonight. So we started out really kind of talking about what is it that we're trying to accomplish with this project? How can we be forward-thinking in a way that sets this facility up and sets the city up well into the future? And so we started talking about growth. It's really kind of difficult to understand what technology and then changes are going to occur, but we really wanted to try to look out 20-plus years in our solution. So as you look at some of the ideas that we have, I'll point out some of those features in the design that gives us some flexibility as we look well into the future. One of the key components of the project was to try to create some space within the facility that would provide a kind of a clear separation from the business side of doing fire operations to the living side of operations through lobby space, a secure perimeter, and some of those types of things, so that we don't have people just kind of walking into the station and be able to kind of freewheel wherever they want to in that solution. But we wanted to make sure that we were providing space in that public area for some of the history that goes into our fire stations. It's a great cultural piece as we look at fire station design. Making sure that we have space that would accommodate not only the training component, but be flexible enough to serve as an emergency operations center, if that's something that we want to do in the facility, and then also address those health and wellness features that the chief had talked about. So we took all of those ideas and kind of categorized them into 3 distinct categories in our guiding principles. One was to focus on function and operations. So we want to make sure that the facility is not only safe for our staff, but is also a public facility that the public feel welcome in. Again, making sure that we're promoting our firefighter health and wellness through the design and the features of the building. Sustainability was a great conversation to have. I know that the city has a great commitment to sustainable features, and so one of the things that we did as we looked at design solutions and budgets is to where can we incorporate some of those into the building, but not necessarily look at a particular program, but look at all of the different programs that are out there. And how can we make sure that the station is going to last well beyond the 20 to 30 years that we would expect out of these facilities. Certainly, you've heard about the facilities that you currently have, but using the right types of materials can really extend the longevity of our buildings. We had our 3rd category, which was community pride, which is really displaying and reflecting the history of the department within the community and making sure that the design of the facility kind of fits within the architectural context of the location where it's at, because there's some residential stuff in and around where the station will be built. So a little bit about the programming piece of it. As Chief Mondor had indicated, we had started out with looking at a program that had a lot of features in it that, as we kind of went further through the design process, we were able to find some strategic areas where we could make some reductions without necessarily changing the overall design of the building. And so we have it categorized into these 6 different sections: support space, which is really our lobby, office area, our lobby, our EOC spaces, toilets, those types of things, is about 4,500 square feet. Our command area, which is our offices for administration, is about 900 square feet. Our firefighter living area, which is our sleeping rooms and the living and kitchen areas, is right about 5,500 square feet. Our apparatus space, we were able to generate some efficiencies in how we're housing vehicles in there, and we're able to get that space to about 4,800 square feet. And then we have some additional vehicle storage space at about 7,400 square feet, which gets us to our current station design at right around 30,000 square feet. So one of the things that I wanted to talk a little bit more in detail on is to build upon the conversation we had about how we want to deal with the decontamination process in a fire facility. It's kind of a core feature of that apparatus support space that we had talked about. And to incorporate some of those features into the building, it requires a lot of discussion around how we're going to move through that decontamination process as we come back from an event. And so we have on the left side there the red zone, which is coming off of the apparatus floor itself. So as you come back to the station, that area we consider a contaminated area. And so what we want to do is move our firefighters through a decontamination process that removes the gear. All the gear is stored in the gear wash area. So we've added some space in there for a set of their equipment to be stored in that area. We have our the washers and dryers for our apparatus gear are in that area. And so we want to find a circulation flow that then doesn't allow that firefighter gear to get back into the firefighter storage area until after it's been cleaned, which is that blue zone right up above where that decontamination area is. And so we've sized that area to accommodate 2 sets of firefighter gear. So there's the ability to have one set of your clean gear, or in essence both of them there once they've been cleaned, but have room for that second set of gear in that location. So it adds a little bit of square footage, but it's a commitment to make sure that we only have clean gear in that gear storage area. And then as you continue through that decontamination process, we have toilets and showers in that area, and a place where our firefighters can get cleaned up and before they move into the clean zone of the building, which is where our living space is. So it's important to kind of talk through this diagram. So as you look at efficiencies and how the layout of the facility is, and how we're not only responding out from the facility, but how we're responding back. So this is the site. This is the existing site of the station. And so what we are anticipating doing is the existing station will need to come down in order to build the new solution. We are trying to utilize some of the existing approaches, being kind of neighborhood friendly. People are kind of used to how the fire station operates there right now. So we have our apparatus area being able to exit right out onto the County Road C there. Right where the current drive approach is right now. So we're not changing how our fire trucks are leaving the site. We have added a return path off of Hazelwood to get us back into the station, because what we're trying to create is much of a true drive-through facility as we can. So one of the safety issues that we have is anytime we have to back up a fire vehicle, we try to avoid that if we can. So our apparatus bay gets a little bit more elongated in that area. So we ended up putting our administration and firefighter living area over a little bit further to the right on that site where we'll have some public parking. We are trying to preserve some buffer space and green space between the fire site and the surrounding residential area. So we've pulled the fire station as far forward on the site as we can and still allow for an apron on the front of the building where our fire trucks can get in and out. So as you get a little bit more detailed into the plan, you can kind of see some of these spaces starting to take shape on the site. So off of our public parking area, there'll be our kind of main entry lobby area. The room that's labeled up as training is accessed off of that lobby area with some public toilets, a small exam room. So say you're coming into the station to meet with one of the firefighters to do a blood pressure check or something like that. We don't necessarily have to bring them all the way into the station. So we have a nice large lobby where we can do our historic displays. We can meet with community as they come into the facility. We have some restrooms right there. And then that touches our command area, which is where our firefighter administration offices would be located at. In the middle area there, we have that decontamination area we were talking about. So right kind of centered in the heart of the building is where we have our firefighter gear. So as we're leaving out to an event, it's close by our vehicle apparatus area. And then as the trucks come back, we have our gear wash area and our decontamination. And so we spent a lot of time talking about where our apparatus would be in the station. And so those first 3 bays really house our ambulances and our rescue vehicles. And then we have a small garage to the south there that houses our command staff. And so all of those vehicles are the ones that are our priority vehicles. And so they're located as close to the gear area and the equipment area as we can get them. And then we have 3 additional drive-through garages for the rest of our vehicles. And one of the things that I'll note on there is for any sort of future growth in this facility, we've moved the building a little bit further over to allow for a future addition onto the building where we've got it labeled up as future bays. It's a way to kind of think about the flexibility in that if you change how you disperse vehicles, we have room on the site to be able to add on to, so we're not pinched into a corner on the site. We are showing a little bit of space on the site for stormwater retention. So as part of our need to manage our water on site, we need a little bit of room for that to be able to occur on site. So we are anticipating a 2-story building at least over the administration area. So we want to get some good separation between our firefighter living area and our administrative spaces. And so we have upstairs is where our firefighter sleeping areas will be, our kitchen and living and dining area, a small study up on that level, and then showers and laundry space. So one of the conversations is always how many sleeping spaces do we provide for our firefighters? And so we have a good number of them in the program here, but if you need to add additional firefighters in the future, where would we put them? So there are 2 things that we had talked about. One is being able to convert spaces like study areas and library spaces into sleeping spaces, but also there's quite a bit of roof area up there that we can expand out onto. So our second floor doesn't cover the entirety of the square footage of the lower level, so that gives us flexibility to be able to add on for some of those activities as well. We're also suggesting that we structure the roof of the apparatus area to be able to support solar panels. That's one of the things that we've seen in our fire stations where you've got all of this large roof area. Could we design the roof to be able to accept any sort of equipment on there? There's really negligible cost on the front end, but if you were to come back later and want to add it on, there's some supporting structure that would need to be added to that. So we would recommend adding some of that early on in the process. So one of the things that we also spend some time on, not only touring stations, but also doing some research on what do fire stations and public safety facilities cost in today's dollars. So these aren't dollars that they cost when we built them. So we've taken the construction costs of the time that they were built and inflated them to the time frame that you're looking at building this station, just to give us a sense as far as what historically have fire stations been costing. And what we found is that stations are ranging from, on the low end, around $260 a square foot to $290 to $300 a square foot. So a lot of that comes into decisions that you might want to make related to materials, efficiencies in the design, mechanical systems, and then to what level do you want to incorporate sustainable features into the building. And so all of those have some impact on cost. And so what we decided to do was, at least initially, as we're talking through with council what we should be budgeting for, we took a fairly conservative approach and determined that about $275 a square foot would be at least a good starting point for conversation around construction costs, so that would put our station construction for a 30,000 square foot facility at about 8.2 million. There is some demolition and site prep that's necessary to get ready for that, so at about 75 grand for that. Project cost multipliers, which is furniture, equipment, fees, testing, all of the things to make sure you have a complete station, is about an additional 30%. On top of that gets us to a total project cost of about 10.7 million for what we're talking about. And that would assume about a midpoint of 2021 for construction of that. So depending upon the timing of when this work would occur would have some influence on costs. So, schedule-wise, we didn't really talk much about the duration of what it takes to put a station together. So we had some conversations as a core planning group on conceptually, if the council said, yay, this is great, let's just jump right into it. We need roughly about 2 months to do the initial final design stuff. So we've got a good start on it with the study, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done. So it'll take a few months to do that. Design development is really where we get into the nuts and bolts of the layout of the building, start placing furniture, start placing technology, that type of stuff. And then the bidding documents will take another 3 to 4 months to put those together. Along the way, we would want to continue to engage with council as to the design solution and look for some feedback on that as we go through the process. We're anticipating that it would take roughly about 10 to 12 months to construct a new station, so you have some initial site prep that would have to be done with the existing station, and then to construct the station. So if everything kind of continues to move forward, you could anticipate being complete with the station in the fall of 2021. So that kind of shows you how we got to the kind of midpoint of 2021 for construction.
Okay.
So with that, I would turn it back to Mayor and Council for any questions that you might have.
Thank you. I'll tee this up with a couple of questions. Chief Mondor, in terms of the projected time frame to build this, I take it that what we would be doing is tearing down the current station at Hazelwood and C and building a new one at that site. That one won't be in operation while construction is going on. Is that a correct understanding?
That is correct, Mayor Abrams.
Okay.
And to expand on that, the staff from the Hazelwood station would be temporarily relocated to the Gladstone neighborhood and operate out of there. So we'd have to make some minor modifications at that station at that time.
Okay. A couple things that come to my mind in thinking about this, because about 85% of your calls are medical related. Do we have enough built in terms of ambulances for at that particular station?
Yeah. So right now, we're working towards having a peak load ambulance that's just standalone staffed during the day, and that's when the busiest times are. So this is going to relocate the resources from Station 2, which is an ambulance and an engine during the day, and then combine that with an ambulance that we call a split crew. If they get a fire call, they go on the engine. If they get an ambulance, they go on or a medical call, they go on the ambulance. So those resources will be moved up there. We continue to analyze the data and the staffing levels by time of day. It's part of our strategic plan, and certainly any changes we would bring forward to you.
Okay. When you were talking about the state of repair at the Hazelwood and County Road C station, what came to my mind was we should probably be talking about the state of disrepair. It's now 50 years old, and or approximately 50 years old. And when I was there last summer, and I know other council members were there as well, meeting residents and looking at possible plans for that station, it was amazing to me what disrepair that station is in and how we desperately need to address that. I'll just tell you, I was embarrassed that we are still operating out of that station, and we absolutely need to do something. So I really appreciate this, and I think the designs appear to be very, very well thought out in terms of, making sure that uniform or the equipment is all cleaned and that it's separated in the different zones. And we certainly want to support our firefighters. One last question, Chief Mondor. Last week there was an article in the St. Paul Pioneer Press, and Chief Inks from the St. Paul Fire Department had written a letter to other chiefs fire chiefs in Ramsey County about closest response units, and that they were thinking about pulling out of an agreement that we've been in for a little bit of time. And I'm going to ask you a question about what does that have any impact on what it is that that you're proposing doing with this new fire station. And just for council members, I want to let you know that I have put together a response, an op-ed piece that is going to be going to the St. Paul Pioneer Press this week. Thank you to Mr. Sharon and Mr. Mondor for providing facts about the true facts about what's really happening and how Maplewood has really provided stellar service for the city of St. Paul. So that will be coming out, I hope, sometime this week. But do you want to respond to that? Because I know that residents certainly are going to be concerned about that after reading that article.
Certainly. Thank you for the question, Mayor Abrams. When we consulted with Fitch and Associates, one of the principles of their recommendations is they do not build systems on things that can change radically. So there are certain things that we understand that we don't have control over. People can back out of agreements, such as the closest unit dispatching program, but this system was developed to create a system that will respond to 90% of the emergency calls in 8 minutes or less in Maplewood. It does not account for those subsequent agreements. We've talked for a long time that we've invested in our staffing model, but we understand that we have limited resources and we can't staff for every exigency. We will continue to rely on automatic aid agreements and closest unit dispatching agreements where the community partnerships exist, and look forward to working with all of our neighbors to make sure that their needs are met moving forward. But be clear that we began this in 2016, this process. While response is part of the global piece of this, the fire station recommendations from Fitch did not account for closest unit dispatching. So any changes to closest unit dispatching do not change the recommendations from Fitch and Associates, because it was based on applying our resources to respond to the demands in our community. And they understand that all communities, for the most part, rely on neighbors when certain call types exist.
That really clarifies it. Thank you. And one last question. I see we've got some other questions. Can you speak a little bit about our police officers and how they're trained in terms of emergency medical kinds of calls that they may be dispatched to?
Sure. So over the past two and a half years, we've worked with Regions Hospital, the Public Safety Department, with firefighter paramedics and some of their training staff to train all of the police department in emergency medical responder. So in times where calls exist that are time critical, such as a cardiac arrest, a baby not breathing, choking, someone bleeding significantly, the police officers are trained in first responder or emergency medical responder and can get there and save time on the clock for those time-sensitive emergencies. So we have, I just met with Chief Nadeau. We have 5 officers left, and then the entire force will have been trained in that, which adds another element of our overall response model to medical calls.
And I think that certainly gives our residents a level of comfort that the first person there is going to be trained medically to deal with those very urgent kinds of issues. So thank you for that. Councilmember Smith.
You asked my question.
Oh, okay. Councilmember Knudsen, do you have a question?
Thank you, Mayor. I did, I'll have a comment. You asked my question.
Oh.
So I was going to say I really commend all of you for doing this. It's a very complex situation, and you got the trust of the community at hand, and you did a great job. Steve, Mike, and of course Rich. I just it was so impressive to work with you and how hard we pressed the consultants to make sure that we were doing the right thing. And it's a big trust in you and certainly our community. So, and I like the flexibility in your building. I mean, think of, as the mayor said, the transition from fire to EMS. I mean, right now we're a very dominant structure. I remember at St. John's, designed an ER for 15,000 visits, and we had 30,000 in the next year. And the building was designed as the architect suggested, with all the pillars, everything were structured for going up and going out and everywhere. So I really appreciate the work you all have done.
Thank you.
And I would comment upon that too, that I appreciate the fact that you've got room for the additional bays, should we need that. That, you know, this is about a sustainable fire department that will meet our needs not only today, but 20 years down the line. And, you know, I sit up here as a council, with this council, that this is we're dealing with a building that lasted 50 years. And and it certainly needs, it needs to be torn down is what it needs to be. So I'm really I appreciate everything that you've done on this. So thank you very much. Very nice plans.
Thank you.
So, thank you. Council members, that is, Councilmember Juniman.
Thank you. I was going to be quiet, but you know, it gets hard for me. Having been here over the long haul, I've been here long enough to see this Hazelwood Station deteriorate. And I really applaud our firefighters for being willing to stay there. I mean it. It's just like, you know, you have to be dedicated to put up with that as a place to, I use the term loosely, keep yourself. So you deserve this building, Blair. And I do think I too think it's really beautifully put together. You know, to meet now and then, should we need more, I just think it's wonderful. And I also want to remind the residents that what you said at the beginning, every stakeholder's been involved almost from the very beginning. And that makes a difference, a big difference to us up here too, to know that the people that are going to have to work in this place and know what to do in a place like this will have the place to do it in. So we really trust what you have come up with. And I too think it's a wonderful plan. I do think, though, with the shape of this building, we should probably have a demolition party.
I'm sure some firefighters would take you up on that.
Yeah, that just might be happening. That sounds like some fun. And I
A
think
ribbon
too,
on a demolition.
you know, the fact that this did not just happen overnight, there have been so many people that have been involved in this. We have been studying this for 4 years. And what I really appreciate about our fire department is that we're basing these decisions for the future on data. And I know I look at the data that you send us every week, and sometimes I send emails to Chief Mondor, what's happening with us? Because this really is a data-driven issue for our community, and we want to make sure that we stay on top of that. So thank you very much, and thank you for everyone who's been involved in this over the last 4 years. We're making progress, so thank you.
Thank you.
And with that, council members, we have nothing else on our agenda. And so we are going to adjourn, and we will be back again at 7 o'clock. And I see we have some family members who are joining us because we're going to be swearing in 3 new police officers tonight, which is always my favorite thing to do. So with that, we are adjourned.